I would like to start by telling you the story of the worst presentation I ever gave in my life and how it changed my life. I was a new hire geologist at Shell Oil Company in 1984. I had a bachelor's, master's, and PhD in geology. I had studied with Jerry Friedman, who received the AAPG Sidney Powers Medal later, and I learned everything about depositional environments and diagenesis. My first assignment for Shell was in Michigan, and I was asked to study the Devonian because we had an active drilling play to the Ordovician, and we were going to be going through the Devonian, and we needed to understand it. Well, I understood the depositional environments of each one of the formations. I did thin sections. I had all kinds of analysis. I gave what I thought was the best presentation ever, explaining this after a 6-month study. My supervisor came into the room after lunch and proceeded to ask me how it went. I said, well, I think I covered all the topics pretty well. He said, well, I have to tell you, this is the worst presentation I've ever seen. You never explained how we could use it to find oil and gas. I slunk back to my office. I was decimated. I had spent 6 months preparing. So I asked for some advice. I talked to some mentors, and I began to look at every analog field. I mapped out where all the hydrocarbons were. I looked at richnesses. I tried to high grade where the best areas in the basin were and overlaid it to my maps. I took some of the depositional environment concepts that I had developed earlier, but I put them into the context of our prospect inventory. And I gave the presentation again. And my boss said, now you're making progress. When I worked for Shell for many years, I noticed a lot of my colleagues had their business cards. You know, when you show up at a job, you either get a pack of 500 or 1,000. Many of my colleagues had 1,000 or 999 of their cards. And I did too. But in the 90s, I started attending local geological society meetings, a few a month, every month, hearing about discoveries and the latest new developments by the people who were making it happen. And I'd bring cards, and I'd hand them out, and I would receive them in exchange. And as I would come home after these dinner meetings or luncheon meetings, and I would take the cards out of my pocket, I began to build a stack. And what I soon realized is the stack of business cards from people outside of my company was far greater than those inside my company. And I realized that I had gone from being inwardly focused, as many people are in big companies at that time, to outwardly focused. And it really was a major transformation in my way of thinking. And then the greatest event of them all. In 1997, I attended an APG event that changed my life. It was at the Dallas Convention, and it was organized by Jim Gibbs. It was called A Legendary Tale. And there was a panel of experts who spoke about how they managed to succeed in life. To me, seeing that the scientist was a hero and that integrated case studies of success, as we celebrate this success, I realized that it helped us realize the potential in each of us. And so, when I had the opportunity to become the HGS president in 1999-2000, I had a vision to create a program, a call to action. I wanted to have a program where we could focus on discoveries by people who knew them well and listen to their exploration philosophies. And we didn't know if anyone was going to show up because typically these programs have lots of science. And I remember being quite panicked. And as we got closer and closer, it was clear we had George Mitchell, we had Mike Halbody, we had top speakers, that the program was going to go viral. And so that was the beginning for me. And then the central idea of a geoscientist using science for good business purposes helped me to come up with the concept of discovery thinking. And I can show you this map here and how the upscale of events has continued through discovery thinking and into discovery thinking at ACE and ICE, to the Playmaker forums, and most recently to the super basin concept. And I'm happy to say that when you look at the amazing men and women, we've got over 115 people for discovery thinking over the 20 forums that we've done. And at first, I called up my friends. And then it became clear that I needed to go and get some new friends. So over the years, I've had help from wonderful people like Ed Dolly, Paul Weimer, and about 10 others who have rotated in to help co-chair the discovery thinking. And as we look back now, after a decade, we made a promise to have 100 men and women tell their incredible stories. We've now had over 125. At this meeting on Monday, we will have the 20th Discovery Thinking Forum. And so many of these talks along the way have been videoed. We have archives on search and discovery. So these videos, not only do we believe about 10,000 people have attended them over the years, but that we've had tens of thousands of video views. And in the world of AAPG, these things have not cost very much. They have actually been a major positive to AAPG's economy because of the many thousands of participants to the conferences and providing better quality. And the cost of the video capture is pretty minimum. We've always been very careful about that. So we have thousands of members of Impact, and we have great instructional material. And so 5 years ago, when I had the opportunity to be president of DPA, instituted a one-day, full-day immersion program called Playmakers. And so we've had 10 of them now. We're double digits, and we think we've had about 1,000 people participate in those. And thanks to many of the organizers, several whom are here today, and several who have been APG presidents, and several who are going to be future APG presidents, I am delighted to say that this program has left a really great legacy. So when I became APG president, the question is, well, what next? It's our 100th and first year. We're entering our second century. We have a foundation of discovery thinking programs and Playmaker programs. And I had an opportunity to have lunch with my friend Chandler Wilhelm. And Chandler described to me that IHS Markit had an idea about super basins, that some of the world's largest petroleum basins in the world, they just keep on giving. And that with the new technologies of horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing and enhanced seismic imaging, basins are being revitalized. And this we know because the Gulf of Mexico was often called the Dead Sea. It had been left several times, actually, in the course of the last 30 years as a place that had no more potential. And look at its new rebound with subsalt and with the unconventional plays like the Eagle Ford, the Haynesville, and other plays. Permian Basin had been left for dead. I worked that in the 90s, and everyone was trying to get out. However, now everyone's trying to get back in, except that the acreage prices are so stratospheric. So the concept for super basins is to go to places that haven't yet that have the fundamentals of good basins, but have yet to experience the energy renaissance. And so that was the concept of the Global Super Basin Leadership Conference. We had that in March. I had a lot of people tell me not to do it. They thought it wasn't going to work. They thought maybe we should study it for 2 years. I had folks suggesting. And in 6 months, we got the best speakers in each one of top super basins. And thanks to their generosity, and here's a picture of them, and participation, we were able to put together a conference in months instead of years. And we had a packed audience, and we have it on video. And I'm happy to say that this content is something that's going to continue. We have an event here in Salt Lake City on Monday morning before Discovery Thinking on super basins. And so I wanted to be able to share with the general convention audience some of the concepts of super basins. And then we want to have something integrated into APG. We want to have papers in the APG bulletin, landmark papers. Remember those papers by Scott Montgomery? I sure loved them. They were real practical. They had good science, but also they had quick, usable science about the latest discoveries and plays. And the bulletin hasn't really had that recently, so we have gone out and are recruiting each and every one of the key basins, landmark papers. And so we have several that are about to roll out, one on the Permian Basin by Bill Fairhurst, one on the Anadarko Basin by Rick Fritz, and also Gulf of Mexico by Paul Weimer. And we have about 8 others committed, and I'm asking for those who are interested to help us build this legacy of papers over the next couple of years. Instead of doing a memoir, I think that it's better to do it so that they get into the bulletin just as soon as they're available, and so that they can get widespread uses. Because in the end, another central idea is that geoscience matters. And this is especially true in this day and age where engineering is very important and where the business of APG requires that we show that geoscience architecture play a key role. So, ladies and gentlemen, my central idea is that oil and gas is important to find and to do it in a business context, and that geoscientists are heroes. Each and every one of them has a different story. We have a dynamic, diverse culture, and we are expanding that culture. Every man and woman around the globe who finds energy lifts up our collective wisdom for all of us. And it's important that APG fulfill the role that we can all learn from this person. And my vision early on was to have people tell their discovery stories, people who know the integrated case histories to tell us in their personal lives, in individual field discoveries, in individual plays, and now on a larger scale in individual basins and super basins, so that we can compare and contrast to all of the largest basins around the world. And so I think that that call to action is to have integrated studies where geoscience really matters. And I would ask each of you to be actors on that stage. In other words, I would ask you, if you haven't already, to give a talk at APG and to focus not just on academic aspects, but on things that have a business, how geoscience has an impact for business. I would ask you to submit papers to Search and Discovery. I would ask you to share your slide decks. I would ask you to give posters. I would ask you to chair sessions. I ask you to organize playmaker conferences. If you have an area in your section or region where there are some interesting plays, like in Europe, there's the North Sea, let's have focus on the plays in a playmaker type thing. And let's have some super basin conferences. So, for example, in Latin America, let's focus on the basins that are highly prospective in Latin America and Africa and Europe and Canada and the Middle East and Southeast Asia. And I would say that if you will do this and if you will write papers, that the fundamental thing that we must remember is to give back, make our heritage better than we found it. And that is something that Mike Halbody asked us to do, and that is something that we need to deliver, and that is something we can pay forward to the next generation because they did it for us. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us enjoy this wonderful conference together. I want to congratulate Mike Vandenberg and his team for the incredible program that's been assembled, and I'd like to see you out there learning and sharing and paying it forward. Thank you.